Let's say you did it. Against all odds, you've landed your forces on American soil. You've pushed through the beaches, overwhelmed the defenses, and somehow, through sheer military brilliance or catastrophic American failure, you've won the conventional war. The White House falls, the Pentagon goes dark. The United States military, the most powerful fighting force ever assembled, surrenders or scatters. You stand victorious on the steps of the Capitol building, ready to claim your prize. But here's what no invasion planner wants to hear. You haven't won anything. You've just inherited a problem no military in history has ever solved. Because conquering America and holding America are two completely different nightmares. And the second one, every serious attempt at something similar has ended the same way. In failure. Here's why. You're the geography swallows. Armies whole. The United States covers 3.8 million square miles. That's larger than the entire continent of Europe. You're not occupying a country. You're occupying a continent with a single government. Every occupying force in history has learned the same brutal lesson. You need boots on the ground. Lots of them. The British Empire at its peak couldn't hold Afghanistan. The Soviet Union collapsed trying. The United States, with all its technology and firepower, couldn't secure Iraq. And those countries are a fraction of America's size. Military strategists estimate you need roughly 1 soldier for every 50 civilians to maintain a functional occupation. America has 335 million people. Do the math. You'd need nearly 7 million troops just to maintain basic order, and that's assuming zero resistance. No nation has ever demonstrated the ability to field, supply, and sustain a force that large on foreign soil. Not China, not Russia, not a coalition of both. But let's say you try anyway. The invader lands forces in New York, Los Angeles, Houston. Major cities fall. Airports, harbors, government buildings, all seized. Congratulations. You now control roughly 3% of the landmass, and you've inherited a logistical apocalypse. The infrastructure becomes your enemy. America wasn't built to be occupied. It was built to be ungovernable by outsiders. The interstate highway system spans over 48,000 miles, connecting every corner of the nation, which sounds useful until you realize what it actually means. Infinite attack vectors. Your supply convoys need those roads: food, ammunition, fuel, reinforcements. Everything moves on asphalt. But you can't defend them all. You don't have enough soldiers to guard every mile, every bridge, every choke point. And the American population knows this. Picture this: a single explosion on a highway overpass in the Rockies. The road's gone. Supply trucks stack up for miles. Your forces on the other side start rationing food within 48 hours. One bridge down, and you've cut off entire regions. The American Midwest alone has tens of thousands of bridges. You'd need to garrison every single one. You don't have the troops. Then there's the power grid, a decentralized web of over 3,000 utilities and 200,000 miles of high-voltage transmission lines. Sabotage a few key substations and entire states go dark. Your occupying forces now operate without lights, without communication, isolated, water treatment plants, natural gas pipelines. Yes, cell towers, rail networks. Every piece of infrastructure that makes modern life possible becomes a weapon pointed at you. And here's the part that keeps military planners awake. Americans built all of it. They know where the weak points are. They know which transformer station blacks out 3 counties, which pipeline feeds which base. You're not fighting an army anymore. You're fighting the land itself, and everyone who knows it better than you do. The armed population bleeds you dry. This is where the occupation truly dies. There are approximately 400 million privately owned firearms in the United States. More guns than people. No other civilian population on Earth is this heavily armed. Your occupying soldiers aren't walking through a defeated nation. They're patrolling the world's largest armed insurgency waiting to ignite. Every farmhouse could be hiding rifles. Every truck could be carrying explosives. Every quiet neighborhood is one spark away from becoming a war zone. Insurgencies don't need to win battles. They just need to survive. The goal isn't defeating your army in open combat. The goal is making occupation so costly, so bloody, so exhausting that you give up and leave. And Americans have home field advantage. A resistance fighter in the Appalachian Mountains strikes at dawn. By noon, he's 50 miles away, invisible in terrain he's known since childhood. The dense forests of the Pacific Northwest swallow entire units. The deserts of the Southwest kill with exposure before you even make contact. You're not dealing with untrained civilians either. America has over 18 million veterans, people trained in tactics, explosives, and guerrilla warfare. As many served in Iraq and Afghanistan. They learned how to fight an occupying force. Now, imagine them using those same tactics on home soil with unlimited knowledge of the terrain. Your casualty reports stop mentioning battles. They mention convoys that went silent, patrols that radioed for help and never made it back, officers found dead in their bunks at 3 a.m. And the worst part? You can't identify the enemy. There's no uniform, no front line. Just a population that cooperates during the day and kills you at night. The mathematics are simple. You lose 3 soldiers per week to ambush in one sector. Multiply that across a continent. The numbers become unsustainable within months. If you're enjoying this kind of deep dive storytelling into war, power, and geopolitics, subscribe for the next one. Now, back to the nightmare. The logistics collapse into chaos. Let's talk about keeping your army alive. An occupying force needs food, water, fuel, medicine, and ammunition constantly. In a normal invasion, you establish supply lines back to your homeland. Ships cross oceans, planes make runs, everything flows. But America is different. Your nearest staging point, whether it's across the Pacific or the Atlantic, is thousands of miles away. Those supply ships cross hostile waters where American submarines still hunt. Those transport planes navigate airspace where surface-to-air missiles wait. Even if your supplies make it to shore, you're not done. Picture a convoy, 20 trucks leaving the coast. Destination, an outpost in Colorado. The route crosses 4 ambush-prone mountain passes, 2 bridges that could be destroyed, 14 towns where hostile eyes watch every vehicle. 18 trucks arrive. The next convoy loses 4. The one after that doesn't arrive at all, and you can't live off the land. America's food supply chain is hyper-specialized. Crops go to processing plants, which feed distribution hubs, which supply stores. Disrupt any link and the whole system collapses. Now, you're not just fighting insurgents. You're managing a humanitarian crisis. Millions of hungry, desperate people who blame you for their suffering. Food riots, looting, chaos that requires even more troops to contain. Your soldiers burn through fuel at staggering rates. Tanks, trucks, generators, helicopters, everything runs on petroleum. America produces oil, but refining it requires functional infrastructure. Infrastructure that's being sabotaged. So, you're importing fuel across those same dangerous supply lines at enormous cost. Every tanker that makes it through is a victory. Every tanker that doesn't means bases go dark. Every day your occupation continues. You hemorrhage resources you can't replace. The math doesn't work. It has never worked. Yes, the fracture. You can't control. Here's the psychological dagger. You're not occupying a unified nation. You're occupying 50 semi-sovereign states with wildly different cultures, politics, and geography. A resistance cell in Texas operates nothing like one in Montana. The tactics that work in New York City fail completely in rural Wyoming. You're not fighting one insurgency. You're fighting dozens, each adapting to local conditions. Some regions resist violently. Others slow-walk compliance, sabotaging through bureaucracy. Local governments become shells, technically cooperating while doing everything possible to undermine you. You impose martial law. It works in cities where you have troop concentrations. Everywhere else, it's a suggestion. You can't win hearts and minds because there's no central culture to appeal to. America's identity is decentralized, contradictory, fiercely independent. The only thing uniting these people is that you're the invader. And every mistake your forces make, every civilian killed at a checkpoint, every house burned in retaliation, every family torn apart, creates 10 new insurgents. You're not suppressing resistance, you're manufacturing it. The home front collapses. Back home, things are falling apart. Your news agencies stop showing victories. They show funerals, flag-draped coffins arriving daily, empty seats at dinner tables, parents asking why their children died for a piece of land you can't even hold. The economic cost becomes unbearable. Your nation's treasury empties itself into an endless war. Infrastructure at home crumbles while resources flow across an ocean into a black hole. Political opposition grows. Its protests fill the streets. Your government faces a choice: continue bleeding the nation dry or admit defeat. Meanwhile, your soldiers, the ones still alive, are exhausted, demoralized, watching friends die in ambushes they can't predict or prevent, fighting an enemy they can't see in a war that has no end. Some crack, some desert, some just stop caring whether they survive. Occupations don't collapse loudly, they bleed out. The end game is written. So, here's where any invasion force ends up. Forces spread impossibly thin across a continent. Supply lines under constant attack. Casualties climbing with no end in sight. Infrastructure crumbling. Population hostile. Troops exhausted and dying in a land they don't understand. And back home, the will to continue evaporates. Eventually, you pull out. It's not because you were defeated in battle, but because the occupation became unsustainable. The cost exceeded any possible benefit. The land itself became your enemy. The Soviet Union learned this in Afghanistan. The United States learned it in Vietnam. The British Empire learned it in a dozen colonies that bled them white. Occupying a hostile population across vast distances doesn't just fail, it destroys the occupier from within. Of everything we covered, what do you think breaks an occupation first? The armed population, the logistics, or the geography? Let me know in the comments. The real defense. This is America's true shield, not the military, not the nukes, not the Navy. It's the land itself, the armed population, the impossible logistics, the decentralized chaos that turns every occupation into a slow, grinding nightmare. Yeah, you can't invade America because even if you win the war, you lose the peace. The prize isn't worth the cost. The land devours armies. The people bleed you dry. The infrastructure turns against you. History has never recorded a successful occupation of a continent-sized nation with a heavily armed, motivated population and no central weakness to exploit. America isn't unconquerable because it's unbeatable in battle. It's unconquerable because holding it is suicide. And every military planner who's ever studied the problem understands this reality. That's why no one tries. The war might be winnable. The peace never was.